Well, happy Monday, everybody. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, and you're listening to the Dr. Laurie Davis Show, brought to you by the Disability Channel. And my co-host, Sylvia Somerville. Good morning, Sylvia.
Hey, good morning, Laurie.
After all that snow. And our special guest today, Stephen Beardwood. And this is a man of many talents. He's been on our show before, and just catching up with Stephen after the Christmas season and so on. And really loving to have you back on the show. And we were just discussing food. So I've already made a decision that we're going to invite Stephen to come to a show and share some recipes with us about alternative ways to eat in a healthy manner. And Sylvia just threw some yogurt in the garbage when she realized that it was full of sugar. So anyway, welcome guys and gals to the show today. Over to you, Sylvia. Words of wisdom to the crew, welcoming. And then we'll introduce Stephen more
Words
specific.
of wisdom. I think what I always believe in is no matter what other people think, you have to be yourself. Don't let people force you into playing their game. You be you, and you live your own life according to the rules and etiquette and thing that you want to be.
Whoa. Oh, wow. I don't think you're old enough to join us, Stephen, yet, but we're going to do a show called Wow, Words of Wisdom, and you have to be 70 to be a guest, 70 plus.
Definitely not old enough yet.
You're not there. So you're not on that list right now, but you still have words of wisdom.
My body might pass for that age, however.
Okay. So if you were going to give some wise words this morning, Stephen, what would you say?
Oh, my favorite used to be, don't let it rain on your shiny new toboggan.
Cute.
And I often, if I think back on that, it's like I'm just a smart ass teenager more than anything, right? Because you want to give some words of advice, right? Well, that's smart, right? Don't let it rain on your shiny new toboggan, right? Because it'll rust, right?
Exactly.
I would say a statement like that really is common sense, right? It's nonsensical, it's common sense. And the problem is we no longer do what is common sense. And so I think my words of wisdom would be to roll back time and let's go back and find common sense and start using it again.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Love that. Yeah. And you just said something before the show about food making you sick. What was it you said about why would you go ahead because that's yours.
Why would you put something into your mouth that you know is going to make you sick?
There we go.
Why would you do it, right?
Yeah.
If I know eating sugar and starch is going to cause me inflammation and pain, why would I eat it?
Right.
I should stop, right? I should make a change. But instead, I think that we're trapped in awareness with no action. Well, there's a problem. Everyone looks, there's a problem. I see a problem. We're not going to do anything about it today, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, my words of wisdom, I put this up last week on a little post, and I had to remind myself about it because it was, the old saying, practice what you preach. Well, I reversed that and said, you only get to preach about what you practice, and the rest is BS. Right.
I like that.
Right. That's my words of wisdom for today. And Stephen, that would be why we have to have you back on the show because, I still put things in my body that I know aren't good for me. That extra chocolate cake or, I'm not a sweet eater much, but it's so addictive.
I know. I'm completely blown away by the sheer number of people who cannot express their own will and follow through with a diet change.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of people try it, and I've had a good number succeed in a 30-day trial. So, and this is normally what I would do if someone was talking to me for the first time. I'd say, okay, for 30 days, I want you to eat whole pieces of meat that you bought from the store and had to cut and process yourself, and raw vegetables that you've cut and processed yourself. You can cook them, but you have to buy them raw, cut and process them yourself, right? And that's all you get for 30 days, right? And then after 30 days, And then you can introduce 1 grain. And tell me how your body reacts to that grain. Let me know how it reacts to that apple or the orange juice, because if you eat an orange, you're getting maybe 4 to 6 grams of sugar. But if you eat drinking a 6 ounce glass of orange juice, you're getting 4 5 times that amount. You're getting 20 to 30 grams of sugar.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, what I mean? Like, we have to have him back on another show. Yay. Because today, well, we might get to more of that at the end if we run out of things to talk about. But I have a feeling these three people are never going to run out of anything to talk about. So let's talk about your book. Can we start with that? Because we have the beautiful Sylvia Somerville here, accomplished author and publisher, and now working with me to help me get my books out there. But you're ahead of me on that process, Stephen. So you've been working on your book for a while. So tell us about the book. What is it? What is it about?
Well, the book is on the past 32 years now, going on 33. It's everything that I experienced and others following my medical release from the military. So I served for 17 years. I did 7 years as a commando airborne paratrooper. I deployed into Northeast Africa, into Somalia. We were forced to treat malaria that was under order of a safety study. Canada and Health Canada, Department of National Defense, everyone involved said, yeah, we'll do the study. And the reason the study was needed is because back in 1985 and published in 87, WHO did a study that found there was a 38% neuropsychiatric injury rate. And the manufacturer, when you ask for this drug, no longer wants the liabilities and responsibilities for it. So it forces you to do a safety study so that you accept the responsibilities. So Canada then promptly shelved the safety study, did not complete it, and licensed the drug for use on civilian streets. It is currently still licensed. There's a $22.5 billion lawsuit ongoing surrounding the drug. I'm one of the class of litigants on it, but the most important thing we are really trying to do is to get it off the market because it's still injuring people, and the government has just put a moratorium on any discussion surrounding it, so nothing's happening. Right. So once again, we can't even do awareness on this because we can't even raise the issue. So that's essentially where I came from. And so my health got so bad that I was non-functioning as a human being when I was released medically. And the book is what I had to endure to find healing, and how, despite all of that, the system still has not changed and will not change. There's a guy going through everything I went through today from 30 years ago, still going through it. Nothing's changed, right? So it's like the book is about the need to create the change and the template to do it, because honestly, people just are no longer willing. It's just like the food, right? I'm still going to eat I can't give up my bread. I can't give up my potatoes, right? It's like, yeah, actually you can, but you won't. It's a choice, right? So you make those choices. You're choosing to let it rain on your shiny new toboggan.
Right. So that's scary, Stephen.
Yeah. Sorry.
And what are some things? I know. So what are some things that you personally did to make those changes? Yourself, outside of the system, not making the changes. You made a lot of changes. So what did you do to get healthy?
The first thing I had to do was leave the system. I had to acknowledge that it was causing me more damage than good. I had to recognize that I was not getting healthier. I was not having less neuropsychiatric reactions. I was getting more of them. I wasn't having less mental health issues. I was having more of them. I wasn't having less interactions with drugs. I was having more of them. Just all these things just tend to build and escalate to the point where they start burying you. And then when you almost die more frequently from pharmaceutical drug interactions than in combat. And I've watched around. Now it's 3 inches from my chest, in the middle of Africa. There's something wrong. and with that system's not helping you. And so the first step was to recognize that that was not going to help me to get out of it. And so that's what I did. I exited one system, only to realize there was not another system to enter into. And so instead we decided to design it and build it ourselves, because there's a whole group of us, and not just myself as an individual veteran. There's a whole group of us, similar types of training, similar types of thought, approaching problems the same way. And we all recognize that the system's not helping us. It's not our friend. We all left at the same time. We all came up with the same solutions. And then we started talking to each other. And as we started talking to each other, then we began to realize, hey, we can grow this, and we can start helping guys, get through that process a little bit quicker. So I know a guy right now, he's going to go through 4 years of application to get a pension for a neck he broke while in training. Right. And he's only 6 months into it.
Wow.
Right. And he can't work. He keeps getting fired. Right. Yeah. So he's not employable. Right. Right. So how do you keep the guy eating food, living in an apartment when, he's badly damaged?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, Sylvia and I have had our own discussions because we are daughters of veterans. Both of our dads were in World War II. And I did a show on that, actually. I got a group of women whose dads or moms served during World War II. But thank you for your service, for sure, and all of the veterans out there. But we were raised by those guys who were damaged. Okay. Yeah, and that impacted our outcomes. Go ahead.
I was going to say that means I think you should have a conversation with my daughter, or my daughters.
Yes.
Not that my sons wouldn't also be privy to that, but I mean, from a female perspective, and what she experienced and what she's had to endure. All because of my service, that's a whole another book yet to come.
Absolutely. And Sylvia, you want to share a little bit about how your dad served, and then I'll share about how my dad served, because it's still part of who we are. So over to you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Laurie. Yes, my dad was doing a job similar to yours from your description. He used to paratroop into, behind enemy lines. And I guess I don't know what they did exactly, made way for the troops to come through, or...
That would be subversion, sabotage.
Yep.
Yeah, special forces, right?
All that type of thing. He did all that too. That was his job. He was seriously injured in World War II. He died when he was 45 because he had a lot of shrapnel in his head, and I guess they couldn't remove all of it without killing him. So some of it just sat there till it finally took him. But he told some very interesting stories. And I have a book coming out soon called Life is a Jigsaw Puzzle. Mm-hmm. It tells exactly that, how I was born in a blizzard while Dad was overseas. I was almost 2 when I saw my dad, because from the injury, he had amnesia and he couldn't be moved for a long time. So the time went by, and then he had a lot of difficulty, like most soldiers do, getting back to normal life, and the memories would creep up on them and they'd scream out in their sleep and things like that.
I think people like your father had a better chances of surviving than a lot of the new veterans today, because that era lived it as a community. You were living the war at home, sharing the losses as well. Yep. So when everyone came home, you were just sort of uniting with the losses and sharing and playing catch up. But they all lived it as a community. They dealt with it as a community, and it was less problematic because it was done as a community. Whereas now, our guys come home and they go to ground and they hide and they isolate.
Yeah,
and it's not a good scenario. And I should imagine your father as well, Laurie, is probably not significantly different in that respect either.
No, because now my dad, on the other hand, never talked about it. there were a few stories that he shared, but he really buried it. He did bury it. And he was extremely stoic. You know, I only remember once in my life that he actually said the words, "I love you." But I knew he loved me, and I knew that he was my hero. And there was alcohol involved, and so that created havoc some of the time. But he did have he didn't have his first flashback till he was 75. He lived to be 93. He just passed away in 2016. But you know, when we did the show, you know, what was, you know, he didn't isolate exactly. He was very social, but quiet. And I know that, you know, he would have been maybe a different kind of dad if he had never had that experience. But the one thing that it did for us, for me anyway, as the eldest in the family, it gave me a sense of travel, because he knew there was more than just Nova Scotia, Canada, right? He learned that, oh, there's another whole world over there. You've got to see it, you know? And so he instilled travel in me. And that was because of the war that happened for him. So yeah, there were good things, but there were, you know, to be able to communicate with him sometimes was very difficult, because he would be maybe shut down, or, you know, had a hard day at work, all that. Yeah.
And you know, Stephen, you're absolutely correct in how you describe the then and the now, because back in then, it's true, they used to there was a big group of them, and once a month we'd all get together, and all the kids would be there, and we'd do it at the Legions.
Yes.
Yeah, and we'd all get together and have have fun together. And a lot of guys I know would be over visiting Dad, and you'd hear them talking about the stories, and they'd say, you know, how that went, and from all that, Dad taught us, and I listened to my dad because he was my hero. And he always told us, he said, you know, when you get into an argument and fighting, nobody's going to win, because no one wins. Seriously, when he taught me to, he said it takes a bigger man or woman to walk away, unless it's a matter of life and death. It just becomes all he said, she said. And in the end of it, nobody remembers what happened or how it happened. He said, just walk away. And he said, if people laugh at you, it doesn't matter. It's a bigger person to walk away and not get involved in it, unless, of course, you know.
Yeah, if you're going to fight with someone who really is that unintelligent that they can't grasp a concept, why are you engaged with walk away?
So I have a question for Stephen. So because you mentioned your daughter, and so how do you feel your military experience or lifestyle impacted your parenting? What was it about that you felt wasn't right, or wasn't enough, or you were away, or how do you think it impacted your ability to parent differently?
I went from being a super effective single father, even deployed, right, to then having Children's Aid Society coming after my children, accusations being made up and manipulated, or having my daughter manipulated to make accusations in order to fit someone else's narrative. Children's Aid Society actually holding the evidence of that on their file and not releasing it for like over a year and a half, as we were gearing up into a trial. Geez, I wonder why I won my trial. These kind of things. And then of course, their whole childhood becomes messed up from that. So now, my oldest daughter chased drugs down the streets because that's what her mother did. So she had to do it too, right? When she finally realized it and lost her own children and wanted to come back, and then it's like, okay, I'll help you, but there's going to be some rules in place to protect both of us from each other. You know what I mean? So those kind of things. So it's learning how to have a relationship. I mean, you started off with this phenomenal relationship. I remember sitting on the grass in the summertime with my daughter, rubbing my hand on the grass, saying, "This is grass. See how nice and moist it is, right?" And she would be grabbing the grass and pulling it and smelling it and trying to eat it. And it's like you're just enjoying the day with your daughter on the lawn, and the next minute you're chasing her from using street drugs and prostitution and gangs and everything coming at her, trying to drag her into it,
Right.
You just want to stop it all, and you can't.
Right. So, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, exactly. Reacting. She was busy reacting. Sylvia?
On that note, too, I found that with my dad as well, where you said like your father wasn't able to express love and everything, where on the opposite side, my dad was overly affectionate, because he used to say, and he'd tell us little stories, and he'd say, it came to the point, say he's, face to face, and it's a matter of you die or I die. And he said, I didn't want to kill the man, but I had to. Because if I didn't kill him, he'd kill me.
That's right.
And those kind of stories, and why he always told us, he said, when you care about people, when you truly love people, don't be afraid whether it's just a male friend or a girlfriend or whatever. Come out and tell them, because you don't know. You could turn around and drop dead yourself.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we fail to do the most, that we need to absolutely do, is to have the most difficult conversations.
Yep.
Yes.
And we avoid them because they're difficult, but we can't afford to.
Yeah.
And we need to not avoid them.
That's exactly right. And that's what we hope that we do for others, is to support them with those tools they need to have those difficult conversations. There's so many times I would have loved to have asked Dad about things, but I didn't, because I knew it would go to a dark place or a sad place for him or whatever, right? So now I'd like to move the conversation, if we can, over to Veterans House. I want to hear all about it, because a lot of our listeners and viewers don't know anything about Veterans House. So maybe what inspired that, and just tell us exactly what it is that you do.
Well, what inspired it was a conversation my brother and I were having back in 2011. At the time, Afghanistan, and everyone was talking Afghanistan. Right now, people still, if they're talking suicide, they're talking Afghanistan. But we've lost at least 1 in 14 from our deployment to suicide.
Oof.
That I know of, right? And like in my unit. Several other guys' units, like their subunits, right? The numbers are roughly the same. We've lost 1 in 7 to suicide. Excuse me, 1 in 14. My apologies, not 7, 1 in 14.
Wow.
And so my brother and I were having a conversation back in 2011. Why was I not a suicide? Why was I not a nut job death kind of deal? I went off the road at 120 on a motorcycle into a ditch after a hallucination, which they were calling flashbacks, but it was major, destructive. And had I died, I would have been a motorcycle accident, not a suicide or an accidental death due to post-traumatic stress disorder, which I've never actually had. It's just insane and crazy, so we were having this conversation, and it really came down to why, like what was different in my life. And I just had the right people show up at the right time and offer the right solution. It was not planned, it was mishap, and so then we started talking like, okay, well, maybe we need to talk to a few people. So we started talking to other groups that were talking about doing the same type of stuff we were doing. And we started, having these multiple conversations, and, we found out that all of our ideologies are all the same. But I also noticed that we weren't going to accomplish our goals, and neither were they. And part of that was because none of us had proper training for business and business development. So I took a entrepreneurial boot camp course that was offered for veterans. Came out of it with a 40-page business plan, all the financials, and about a year later, we threw it away. Well, we didn't throw it away, we now give it away. And we started rewriting it to become Veterans House Charity, Alliance International. And our goal is to help others to succeed. Because in realizing that no one was going to succeed because they didn't have the expertise, and we went out and got that expertise, we also made a decision that we would use that expertise to help others to succeed. So in fact, what we do is we help for-profits who are helping not-for-profits succeed. We help not-for-profits who are helping veterans succeed, right? So if you want to be, if you have it in your heart to help veterans, then we want you to be successful, because we would like you to be able to put your donations through our charity, get your tax receipts, and we can get them to the programs, and the programs can do the veterans. So the Discovery Channel is retraining veterans into media. We have Veterans for Healing, which is a phenomenal partnership. They're running wellness camps, boot camps for veterans. It's where I went and got training to get off of prescription medications, to learn how to use cannabis properly. Using cannabis is not just a matter of, oh, here, try this, it's great. You know, no, it's not. Especially if you're like me and you hallucinate on half of it. So you have to have very, very strict things in place. So yeah, it's just like, it's learning to help people, but doing it in such a way that you don't need to get anything in return, right? Because what you get in return, you're giving to someone else anyways. All you are is a conduit to give, right? And that's what we did. We just set up a way that people can help others.
That's awesome.
It made sense.
Yeah, that's that rain on the toboggan thing. Right?
It makes sense to rain on your shiny new toboggan.
Yeah, that's right. Because it makes sense. Common sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to help other people that need help.
Yeah.
Right? It makes sense that if somebody's dying, you sit with them and spend 5 minutes, you know, and comfort them. It makes sense. Yes. It doesn't make sense to abandon them and force them to die in a room alone because you're afraid. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, it's like people who say, well, I don't go to funerals. I don't like funerals. Well, who likes a funeral? Nobody. But you do it, you know, to support the families. And actually, I just read recently, when somebody's passing away, or if you're there when they pass away, you should sit with them for 30 minutes and just let their soul, you know. Yeah. So I've already told Ron that. I said, if anything happens to me, you don't leave for 30. You have a half an hour. Yeah. You're gonna have to spend another half hour with me. I know.
Yeah. And when my wife passed, we spent several hours.
That's awesome.
We were in no rush, and we didn't care what anyone else thought. That was our time.
Yeah. Well, Sylvia has a powerful story too. She nursed her husband for 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he passed, it was something I've never seen before, and I knew he obviously went to heaven, because I watched him lay there. He hadn't moved or spoke or even opened his eyes for 3 or 4 days. And then in the middle of the night, he suddenly just sat bolt up straight with his arms stretched out. And me, I grabbed a blanket. I'm saying, you need a blanket? And in that few seconds, I realized he didn't even see me. He saw something, someone.
Yeah.
He was reaching for with a big smile on his face. And like, I knew something, he was reaching for someone, his parents, angels, I don't know, but something. And then he just kind of fell backwards. And I sat there for a bit, and I thought, okay, was it what I think it was? And I was still holding his hand, and he started getting cold. So I went and got the nurse, and I said, I kind of think he's gone. And she did the vitals, and she said, yep. But then after I realized what it was, I thought, how beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my wife was just so strong and unbelievable. Like, she was at peace even at the time of diagnosis. You know, it was very quick too. It was only 13 days, but
oh my goodness,
she was just totally at peace.
Wow.
Set the tone.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think that's important. I think we do set the tone of our own death as well.
We
yes.
do. We do.
Yeah. So we've all been lost my first husband when I was 34. So I was fairly young. And yeah, so we've all got that common thread there. So back to Veterans House, how can we contribute to Veterans House? How do you, what do you do to raise money? What do people do to support you financially and otherwise?
Yeah. So if you have a particular, like, for example, if you want your funds used deliberately for re-education, for example, right? Then we're going to send them through the disability channel for the retraining. If you, we have a couple other programs which are running as well. So if you want to, for example, if you go onto our website or through Grant Advance and stuff like that, you just simply designate where you want your funds to go, and that's where we're going to send it, right? So if you want them to be used in a particular way, designate the way you want it used, and we will use it in that way. If there are no programs at that point, we'll try to hang on to it and develop it, and see if we can get someone to run it. Keep in mind, we don't run the programs ourselves. We look for partners who run the programs. We provide the bursary for the program to run. And we also provide the oversight, and that's the more the critical thing, because a lot of people can't get funding for lack of oversight, right? So in other words, if I have a foundation, I've got money, and you've got no oversight, am I going to give you my money, right? Because I don't know what you're going to do with it, right?
Right.
I want to make sure that you're going to use it the way I want you to use it, or the way you've promised to use it. And so what we do through the partnerships is exactly that. We have a Schedule A contract. Basically, it's an open contract that says this is the way we're going to conduct business with each other. And then we have an amendment or an annex that attaches to that, an Annex A, and excuse me, a Schedule A. And the Schedule A dictates the programs specifics, right? So this is where the money is being used and how, right? And if there's another program that can be added through the same organization, then we just need to write a second Schedule A, right? And this is where the money is being used and how. So through these Schedule A's, we do financial accounting, and at any point in time, a donor can actually turn around and say, "Hey, how did you spend my money?" And we can turn them around and we can give them a snapshot of how their money has been used and is being spent.
Wow.
Wow.
That is really impressive, Stephen.
Yeah.
And that's unique, I think, for a lot of your non-for-profit organization, right? So that's pretty special.
Yeah, and we have no overhead.
Yeah.
I think by doing it that way too, you're inspiring people to help with donations, and they will, because they know where it's going. They know what's happening to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very important.
And so we vet our partnerships as well for the same reason. Like if you can't do the business end of it, and if you're not going to be financially accountable, then we're not going to be in partnership.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that part. Yeah. And I didn't know that you were totally online with everything too. Yeah, that was new information.
Yeah. Well, why have offices when there's no need to, really, like,
right.
And even if we were to have a full-time employee, which I really want right now, God, I wish we had the money for a full-time employee so I could do less. But even if we had that, I'm not paying for a set of offices. He's going to have to work out of his own home, or she's going to have to work out of her own home. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Very cool. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to ask Sylvia and I? Maybe because we have conversations, we don't do formal interviews, and maybe there's something that you are wanting to ask either of us.
If you were facing this, I'm going to bring it right into politics today, because I got to tell you, I've had enough with social media. I do not find it social at all. I find it social. There are people that I have known for decades who, over the past 4 or 5 years, are toxic trolls. You
Yes.
know, I've never imagined to be that kind of a person before in my life, and now it's like I don't want anything to do with them.
Mhm.
I think it's just making people nastier and nastier and nastier. And in face of this election, which has been even more, divisions, deliberate, and from both sides. What's the best solution going forward? I guess without being completely disengaged, how do you engage with people that are like that? Like they're narcissists, and I don't want to be around them. And there seems to be more of them today than ever. Like, how do you?
Mhm. Well, when I started my business 32 years ago, and I realized that change had to happen then, that was 32 years ago.
Mhm.
I had this mantra: one person at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time. And we've turned whole communities around, and I'm living proof of it. I've visited them, and you couldn't even recognize the reserve that I'd worked on. So it starts there, and then of course that's what inspired my book, which Stephen has purchased a copy. Sylvia,
Excellent.
21 days of happiness, joy, and inner peace, because it all starts with us. So eventually, if we multiply our happy, peaceful selves with other happy, peaceful selves, then we have our own community. And we have that community already. And I'm going to invite you, Stephen, to join us. We meet every Monday night at 7 o'clock. And I think that's what we have to do, and allow people the freedom to, like Sylvia said in the opening remarks, just to be you. In the midst of all the chaos and all the confusion, there has to be that stable, peaceful factor. So we're going to do 12 books this year with all of the tools that a person would need to be able to achieve that. And I want those books in the hands of every young person, because they're written at a grade 3 level.
Yeah.
Right? I want my books in the hands of all of our young people so they can start shifting this, and they have to use this to write. Can't do it on a computer. You can't do it on, it's just you and that book. And that book becomes your new best friend, actually, because the book is actually talking to you. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to get people who are in high places that I know to buy thousands of copies and distribute them to their organizations, their schools, their whoever, because it's going to be contagious, if you will.
Well,
It's going
Laurie,
to be another pandemic, but of a different kind. Sylvia?
to take that point to where it should be taken, I mean, I've read the book because I'm publishing the book. That book should be a compulsive reading and working within the schools. And it also, I know, not just some, you know what, just every politician should be made to take that course, read that book and do the work. Mm-hmm. We just might have a better world.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're up to, Stephen. You want to play?
Yeah.
Well, you did. You already bought a copy, so you're in the game, man.
No, it's serious, because it's good. It makes people think. It's not just a book you're going to read and it's adventure and things like this. When you start to read it, even the first couple of pages, you think, that's right. Now, why didn't I think of that? Or why haven't I done that? It actually makes you start to find what's inside of you. Mm-hmm. And never mind what somebody's telling you to do. You have to always do what is within you. Mm-hmm. You can't let somebody say, oh, you should buy a red dress, even though you want to buy a yellow one.
That's right.
But some people will do that.
And the part that Stefan's going to really love, there's a couple of chapters in there on nutrition. So just what you're talking about, they have to record what did they eat today, and how much of it was serving them or not serving. You're going to love it. I just know it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but, I hear people say, well, I'm going to change the world. And I'm going, good luck with that.
I think you're right. One person at a time.
One person at a time.
But that person needs to start, the person needs to start changing the most.
That's right.
With you, yourself.
Well, who said it? Gandhi, be the change, right?
Be the change, exactly.
Just be the change.
And I'd like to make a little addition to that, one person at a time, not just one person at a time, but one animal at a time. Seriously, the cruelty that's going on out there, it's just.
Oh, yeah, people are insane.
How can you, if you can't treat a poor defenseless animal with respect and love, how do they treat people? I can't help wonder, what are they doing to people in their life when they're doing that to animals?
Same thing.
It's all connected.
Right. So back to you, Stephen. What are your thoughts on what's going on? And certainly we're in very chaotic times. It's not the first time we've been there, but, back to back with COVID, we're just starting to recover from that. So over to you.
I think it's a lot more cyclic than we really probably want to admit. Yeah. I remember seeing a timeline. This is quite a few years back when the encyclopedias were first becoming digitalized. So you can buy digitalized books, right? Yay! So we got ourselves a digitalized encyclopedia, but it was really cool because it had a timeline laid out of every conflict globally, followed by every treaty, followed by treaty breaches, followed by the next conflict. And you could actually watch it move around the globe, literally, like through this historical timeline. And you could see every couple hundred years, there's this uptick in wars, right? And they went from regional wars, right, finally into that massive big World War I, right? And then almost immediately it began again and built up into World War II. And then immediately again it built up, but they managed to keep it over into the Asian Pacific continent, So that kept it to Korea and Vietnam for a while. And then we had a lull, right? And then we started seeing the escalations beginning again. And I think this is where we're at. We're at the beginning of a long sequence of escalations of minor wars. I say minor because they haven't spilt over the boundaries yet into the other countries, but they will. Like we've got something like in Ukraine, which is still regional. Stuff like, I don't know. Like I just see, I see it collapsing. And the reason I see it collapsing is because people are not willing to make one simple choice, and that's to change themselves, right? And if they only made that one choice, the rest of it would change.
That's right. So let's go. We're going to spread it. It's contagious.
It's contagious. You hit it on the head. You can change one person at a time. You start with yourself, and then you influence another person, and then they'll change. And
that's right. Because what happens when you drop a pebble in a pond?
Ripples.
Right. Yes. And I was telling a client this morning, a gentleman I'm working with, I said, the fact that you're the one person in the family here working on you will change your whole family.
Yeah.
It can't, because once I make a change, that forces the people around me to respond differently, to speak to me differently, to.
Big time. Because even if I go back to that, when I lost my children and I went through all that crap, you know what I mean? The way back, right, what was through having those difficult conversations was change.
Right.
I could still change. I could still grow. I didn't have to be damaged for the rest of my life. Well, maybe I will be, but I don't have to be so damaged for the rest of my life that I'm not functional.
That's right.
I have
it's a decision.
Yeah.
It's a decision, right? So, one of our the whole self-worth journey has been 32 years, and constantly everything always comes down to that as well. So
I
we
find it very
know.
fascinating that you started this journey the same time I did.
I know.
That's weird.
Oh, wow. Is that how long ago it was for you?
90, November 92, first time I took mefloquine.
Yeah. Opened my doors for business in July of 92.
We were prepping for war all that summer.
Wow.
Getting ready because we knew the deployment was coming.
Wow.
And that's another thing people don't realize is that if there's going to be a war, we know about it a lot longer in advance than you'll ever believe.
Yeah.
Because the mobilization to get equipment anywhere in the world, Canada doesn't have the equipment, so first it has to purchase it. Right. So when they start purchasing equipment, you know that war is coming.
Yep.
As long as
there you go.
As long as they're not doing it and they're ignoring the military, war's not coming.
Wow.
And you notice there's a lot of people applying for the military now.
Is that right? Is there an increase?
I saw a documentary on TV, and all these young people are signing up for all phases: land, water, and sea. Land, water, and air. Pardon me.
I'm not sure if was that in Canada, because
that was Canada.
Wow.
That was Canada. It was only on, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago.
Because I know my son asked me about, he's a fire suppression systems analysis. He designs and inspects fire systems for buildings. And he was asking me about joining the military, and I said, don't. Hands down, right now, it is not the time. They have no equipment. They have no training. They have the opposite agenda of what they need in order for you to go into combat and survive. Just stay away. Right. It's a death trap, and they will not support you if you're injured. So
Stephen, I'm just forgetting the drug. Mefloquine. I never can remember the name.
Yeah.
Mefloquine.
It's marketed or licensed under Lariam.
Okay. And the purpose of it was to do what?
It was supposed to stop you from getting malaria, but it makes you way worse than if you had ever gotten malaria in the first place. I would take malaria over the drug.
Okay. And I forgot. I knew that. I had forgotten it.
The other part was you don't see malaria in deserts anyway. So why were they giving it to us in the desert?
Holy! And this is going to be all in your book, right?
It's in the book. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Chapter 1, probably chapter 1.
No.
Yeah. So I think that was a very good question, Stephen. That prompted some good conversation there, and I've always been I've always had much bigger agendas than I talk about. There's a big reason why I do what I do.
Absolutely.
Way bigger than me. It's not even about me. I don't feel. It's just, I just had the interesting thing, communication. My dad was in the Signal Corps during World War II. Had a beautiful command of the language. He could type 90 words a minute on a manual typewriter. They took messages to the front lines. And my gift has always been communication. So I think it's in my DNA. And somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago if I would consider running independently to be our next prime minister. And I said, I was approached many years ago to run, with our premier in Nova Scotia. And I said, if I was to and I told them this in 1990, I said, if I was to put my toe in that cesspool, it would be 22 Sussex Drive, promised to me, or I'm not playing. So that came up a couple of weeks ago again. But I'm not I couldn't handle that. All the crap. No. I'd be terrible. I'd be like Trump. I'd be cleaning house, but it would be in a different way, I guess. Yeah. So the other thing around that too, let's get an opinion. We've got about 5 minutes, so we can talk about the tariffs. How do we feel as Canadians regarding that tariff war? They're even using that word, tariff war. Your thoughts on that, Stefan? I'd love to know.
So I had an opportunity to watch a podcast, and the guy I wish I knew who this guy was, because he's brilliant. Like, I like the way he thinks. He deep dived into a bunch of websites and stuff like that, and he came up with where all of our money has been spent, and he broke it down by the programs they're spending it on, right? And I guess they had also done that for the United States. And in the past 4 years, the US has been spending trillions of dollars into the same BS programs that we've been spending the money on. And so you'll go to the middle of Do 4, and there's a small little town, and you're going to spend $1 million in that small little town studying how a girl with gender identity has to get water. Oh yeah.
What?
And it's like, what? You're actually paying someone to do that in that, like, I'm sorry, but this is money laundering.
Yes.
Right? After watching what this guy uncovered, like, if you read the descriptions, like, they're just insane descriptions, right? And it's trillions of dollars from the US, from Canada, and probably most other places. I think this is an expulsion of the World Economic Forum. I think that they've advertised very proudly how they've infiltrated our cabinets. I think they've advertised very proudly how well that they've manipulated our spending and our tax dollars to be spent outside of our country. I think it's laundering our money into their pockets and coffers. And I think that's just a case of follow the money. So I suspect what Donald Trump might be doing, don't know, because I really don't like the guy either. I think he is a buffoon, but he apparently is a little bit more intelligent than a lot of them, because he got elected twice as the US president. And the bottom line is, I think he's going after the woke left and getting them out of our politics. It's the only thing that makes sense to me, because the war doesn't make sense. The tariffs don't make sense. Destroying our economies mutually, destroying each other's economy, that makes no sense either. So I don't think it's about the economics. I think it's about the reversing the past 4 years. I think society's gone too far down a slippery slope, and it's just auto-correcting. At least that's my hope anyways.
Yes. That sounds logical. That's more rain on the new toboggan.
I don't think that Trump. I don't think Trump is calling all the shots. He gets out there and he jabbers his nonsense. Yeah. It makes no sense and all that. But somebody else is actually doing what they want to do, and he has no control over it. And that's why he got elected, because he had the big power behind him that he doesn't even realize are there. He thinks he's in charge, when in reality he isn't.
Yeah, it's interesting to know who is, who is behind the curtain, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
We know up here in Canada, the Mears family has financed and payrolled every politician who has become Prime Minister of Canada, with very, very few exceptions. Yep. And those few exceptions were the ones that did not last.
Yeah.
Joe Clark.
Yeah.
Right. Being one of them.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Well, listen, our time is up. We have to have you back. Like, I mean, seriously, I want to.
I am a lot more available now than I was.
Yeah.
I'm still playing catch up.
Yeah.
But I am much more solid footing than I was. So.
Oh, well, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. And we were very sorry to hear about Val. And you and your family it looked like a really good Christmas, which was great.
Yeah.
And so we're with you, and we're here for you anytime. And we'll have to have Stefan back to do a book review.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's two shows, book review and then expanding our conversation based on that tool. And then, of course, we have to have a cooking class.
Yeah. And once I finish reading your book, I'm going to pass it on to my daughter, and I'm going to introduce you to her, because I think you two need to have a conversation.
Oh, that's great. I'd look forward to that. Okay. So we'll see everybody in a while. We're back tomorrow with Dr. Ramin Modiri. On Tuesday, we do politics, business, finance every Tuesday at 2:00 your time. And we've had shows on the tariffs, and he lives in California, so he's an American, and he has his finger on the pulse of everything around finance and so on. So we'll be back tomorrow. He's on our team, actually, Stephen, and I think you may have met him once online. I'm not sure. And Sylvia, back to work. You're getting back to work on the book. I'll spend a little time on that this afternoon myself.
Right.
And thank you so much, Stephen, for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It was nice meeting you.
It was me. I enjoyed meeting you as well, Sylvia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Everybody wave goodbye. Don't do it like anybody but you.
Oh, the queen.
Yeah, right. You stop that. That's funny.